So Sunday was a pretty special day. I headed up to the Chamonix, which is pretty much my go-to location on Bluebird Powder Day, especially when the avalanche risk is pretty high. It was 4 out of 5 on Sunday. But the Chamonix is mostly pretty mellow, so it's reasonably safe, as long as you don't do anything too stupid. It also tends to catch the snow really well from whichever wind direction it's coming from. It's very open and it's close enough to Mont Blanc to benefit from the barrier effect from any snow coming down from the north and west, but it's far enough away from Mont Blanc that it's not completely in the rain shadow for anything coming up from the south and the east. So yeah, the Chamonix traditionally has some of the best snow in the area, so that's where I tend to go when it's Bluebird Powder Day, and it did not disappoint this weekend. 3:30 PM on an incredibly busy sunny Sunday, right next to the piste here in the Chamonix. Look at that, still completely untouched. The Chamonix rocks. And before anybody points it out, that one on the track you could see there was also me. On Monday, I headed up to the RV for a ski tour and to escape the crowds. In that regard, it absolutely worked. I think I only saw 3 or 4 other people all day, but unfortunately the snow wasn't that great by then. It heated up rapidly through the day on Monday, so lower down it was incredibly sticky, incredibly humid, and then up top on the ridge, everything was completely reworked by the wind. It was very wind scoured. It was very, very windy up high, and freezing levels have gone up to about 2,500 metres. Most of the peaks in the RV are about 2,400, so you can't get above it down there. I still found some deep, untouched powder high up on the north-facing slopes, but even that was a little bit wind affected. It was quite firm by that point, but still, really good fun to ski. The only problem was the light was completely flat, so I couldn't open out and enjoy my turns too much. I used to ski in the RV all the time during the COVID season when none of the lifts were running, because without any lifts running, there's no point going to a ski centre anyway, because you got to work for your turns, earn your turns regardless of where you are, so you might as well go somewhere quieter. But since then, I haven't actually been back at all. This is the first time I've skied in the RV since the lockdown season, so it's nice to be back, even if the snow conditions were suboptimal. Because the views there are amazing, and it's got so much variety, so many options to ski. Some steeper lines, mellower lines, some pretty extreme couloirs if you're that way inclined, and some just nice gentle ski tours as well, so yeah. If you are in the region and you have a car, I'd highly recommend going for a ski tour in the RV if you want to escape some of the crowds. And on Tuesday, I headed to courmayeur, which is pretty much my go-to place if you want to find some fresh tracks several days after a big snowstorm. Courmayeur, as well as being an amazing ski resort in its own right with some really good terrain inbounds, it also has several big off-piste itineraries which start right from the very top of the highest lift and go all the way down to the valley bottom when the snow's good enough. And these are proper off-piste itineraries. It's not like the off-piste itineraries which you find in Verbier, which are inbounds, semi-patrolled, semi-controlled and waymarked. This is proper backcountry. As soon as you step underneath that rope, you are on your own, but equally you are right next to the resort, so super easy access. As long as you know what you're doing, it's a great way to find some untouched powder several days after the last big snowfall. Now, a lot of the snow over there as well had been both wind and sun affected by that point, so it was by no means champagne powder, but still, even if it is a little bit of a wind crust, it's a little bit firmer, it's still really enjoyable to ski, and there's acres and acres of completely untouched lines to be had. Again, with very, very minimal effort. You start right by the lift, and from there, at most, there's a little bit of sidestepping, no need for skins, no need for boot packing. So we still managed to find some of the goods, even though it had been 3 warm sunny days since the end of the big storm. And you'll never have a bad day in Courmayeur, even if the snow's bad and the weather's bad, there's still the pizza. So I just absolutely love going over to Courmayeur. And not that I drink coffee, but if you like coffee, apparently the coffee over there is great too. And then midweek, I finally gave my poor aching body a rest after 6 days of powder chasing, virtually non-stop from dawn till dusk. I was pretty beat, so I absolutely needed a couple of rest days. And of course, what better way to recover than to go ice swimming? So yet again, the lac down in Passy is still frozen, even though it has warmed up now. So yeah, headed down there for some more ice swimming. January 16th, and this is my first valley branch of the season. People have been doing stuff up here since the Megeve Midi opened back on 20th of December, but the lower half of the valley branch just looked absolutely terrible until this most recent snowfall. So personally, it's really not been worth it. But apparently now, you can ski all the way down to the gondola, so we shall see very shortly. But as you can see, they have now partially equipped the arete. As of Wednesday, there was 1 handrail in. It's Friday today. We've now put 2. They haven't cut the zigzags yet, but as you can see, a guy is just starting to prepare the first corner, so maybe this weekend they'll start cutting them. I doubt it'll be fully open for a little while yet, but at the very least now, you can get down without needing to be roped up, even if you're not particularly confident. I still highly recommend crampons and ice axe, because it's pretty firm up here, but yeah, it's definitely getting much easier to do the valley branch now. This is just above the Salle à Manger, where basically all the itineraries except the Grand Enver converge, and still very, very tricky going at this point, this choke point. Ordinarily, the gully over there is just completely filled in, you can just ski across over the top, but right now, yeah, still a very narrow gully between the rock on the side of the glacier and the icefall here, and quite a lot of sidestepping and sidestepping to pick your way through the blocks of ice here. So we've just done the classic itinerary today, playing it safe as everything is still very lean and very open. The most difficult part is definitely crossing above the Salle à Manger out there. Everywhere else, actually, the skiing is okay. Yes, there are obviously crevasses you need to be aware of, and there are quite a few rocks as well in places. But the snow's been very much wind packed now, so it's almost like skiing on a piste. It's very friendly snow conditions for relative off-piste beginners. You're not going to get stuck in thigh-deep powder, which is quite often the case up here. Earlier in the week, of course, there was at least one day of beautiful powder for anyone who got out here on Sunday or maybe Monday. Since then, everything has been very, very wind worked. Which of course means you need to be aware of wind slab from that redistribution in a few places. But on the whole, the wind's been blowing upslope today, so most of the normal itineraries is pretty safe from an avalanche perspective as well. Last weekend's storm has made a big difference to the snow conditions up here on the Mer de Glace. You can expect similar improvements up on the Glacier d'Argentière as well, but we do still need a lot more snow. It is still incredibly lean for the time of year up here. Part of the problem is, when it's as cold as it had been previously, a lot of the snow on the ice just blows away. So you need repeated snowstorms to pile it up and weigh itself down basically. And there's just been 2 big gaps between the snowfalls that you lose a lot of it again. But with a little bit of combat skiing, you can now get virtually all the way to the gondola without having to take your skis off. There are a fair few places where you're having to sidestep through the rocks and over the moraine ridges. I've definitely hit a few sharks, and a few new scratches on our skis today, but all in all, could be worse. The light was very flat today, which makes it very difficult to read the featureless glacial terrain once you're up on the high mountains. Even though it wasn't actually a whiteout, you did have visual reference points, but it's pretty hard to see what's going on under your feet. But having a good set of lenses definitely helps. So these are the Pro from Outdoor Master. It's one of their cheaper pairs of goggles, retail between about $50 and $70. Yeah, I must say, particularly these pink lenses today performed excellently. They're Outdoor Master's own lenses, so they're not Zeiss lenses, but they still have their own in-house contrast boosting technology, and it definitely made a huge difference. I often ski the Valley Blanche in sunglasses, but I wouldn't be able to see a thing in sunglasses today. So just a reminder that I have got for the rest of the season 20% discount code for Outdoor Master, so I'll leave information for that down here on the screen and in the description. And here I am, back in Chamonix today, Friday, after skiing the Valley Blanche, and this is pretty much the state of play down in the valley bottom. Despite the fact the temperatures have warmed up quite a lot, we still have virtually full coverage on the valley floor. Some snow has melted off of the sunny south and west facing slopes a little bit up the hill, but down here in the valley bottom, again, we've still got probably 3, 4, 5 inches of lying snow on the ground. Plenty of snow still on the roofs, and most of the roads are clear, but some of them are still a bit icy. So it still very much feels wintry down here, even though temperatures are actually quite warm. And it's going to continue to feel quite warm down in the valley here in Chamonix for at least the next 4, 5, 6 days. As we have a southeast wind pretty much set up constantly throughout the next week, which means we've got the Föhn effect in operation. So when humid air is forced to pass up over some kind of barrier, such as mountain range, like Mont Blanc as we have here, when it descends down the other side, it heats up much quicker than it cooled, ascending as it went up over the mountain, which means that you get quite strong temperature gradients from across one side of the mountain to the other. So here specifically, the difference between temperature here now in Chamonix and over in Courmayeur can be quite large, even at comparable elevations. You might think that going further south it's going to be warmer, but no, when you have a southerly or southeasterly wind, you have a strong Föhn effect. So it can be, as it is now, it's about 7 degrees here. It's probably just above freezing in Courmayeur today, but it can be even more pronounced than that. It might be 10, 12 degrees in Chamonix and only 2 or 3 degrees in Courmayeur sometimes. Combined with that, you can also experience the Föhn winds, which I haven't really felt down here yet so far, but of course as the air descends it also expands, and when you're in a confined valley like this it can then come rushing out of all the major valleys. So particularly at the heads of like the Mer de Glace Valley, Argentière Basin and up at La Tour, it can become extremely stormy. So some of the most intense winds we'll ever experience here in Chamonix happen when there's a southeasterly airflow and you get the Föhn effect. But you can experience Föhn winds without the strong temperature gradient, and equally, as now, you can have the temperature gradient without the strong winds. But often, at some point, you'll have both. So as I was saying, for at least the next 4, 5, 6 days, potentially longer, we have a southeasterly or southerly airflow, which means that we're getting little or no precipitation on this side of the Mont Blanc Massif, and over on the other side in Courmayeur, okay, they're not going to get huge amounts, but they're going to get some. The biggest snowfall totals are going to be felt much further south. So that does mean, for the moment at least, there is no more snowfall in the foreseeable future. Nothing meaningful has appeared in any of the forecasts in the next week or more. So while on-piste conditions should remain good for at least the next week or more, we're very much in the low season this time of year, so there's very little traffic, and the base is good now. We've got the base back again, so on-piste the skiing should remain pretty nice, but there's basically no off-piste to go out now. Sure, if you find some particularly sheltered, high up north-facing aspects, you will still find a little bit of powder, but it's going to be much harder to find. And of course, this being Chamonix, nearly every inch of it's likely to have been touched already. Unfortunately, I do feel obliged to bring up the avalanche situation again. I mentioned in my midweek report that over the weekend there was at least 6 fatalities in this part of France alone. countless others throughout the rest of the Alps and the Pyrenees as well. And unfortunately, one of those fatalities was here in Chamonix. And the victim was very well known, he was very well liked in the region, so it is still a bit raw for a lot of people. But unfortunately, we do need to discuss these issues, we need to bring them up, we need to make other people aware, because first of all, this was somebody who should have known better. I'm not going to tell you exactly who they were and what they do, but they were in a position where they should know better. And while I don't know all the details of what happened, I know where it happened, and it was again a category 4 out of 5 avalanche day, and they were in a very well-known avalanche hotspot. The line they were skiing is skiing down avalanche runnels. The clue is in the name. I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but the reality is this person got themselves killed. They did something incredibly stupid. And it's not nice to say these things, but the only way other people are going to learn, and we're going to save more lives, is if we talk about it. For reference, they were skiing a line off of the Aiguille de Posette down towards Vallorcine, and this is an area where somebody gets killed by an avalanche virtually every season. It's not an unknown entity. The risks there are incredibly well known by everybody in the valley, and yet still, every year, people ski there on category 4 avalanche risk days. So, I apologise if I've upset anybody who knew the victim, but this is the only way that we're going to save lives in the future, if we talk frankly about this situation. It may still only be mid-January, but the big school holidays are only just around the corner, when many of you will be heading out to this part of the world for your annual ski trips. So if that's you, and you're yet to book your airport transfers, I'd highly recommend booking with Mountain Drop-Offs. On balance, they are the best company for most people for the services that they offer. Yes, there are cheaper companies out there, but budget is a false economy, because when they let you down, and they will, you have to pay twice. You have to go to another company, when you might as well have gone straight to a good company like Mountain Drop-Offs in the first place. So you can find out more about them using the QR code up here and the link down in the description. If you've made it this far, then thanks for watching, and if you're out skiing anywhere, then of course stay safe, be sensible and have fun, and I'll see you all next week. Woo-hoo.